Hello, good evening. My name's Stephen Aryan. Tonight I'm interviewing the fantasy author Cameron Johnston. Hi, Cam.
Hello.
This episode is sponsored by The Broken Binding, and there is a special deal on that if you order The Coward, which is my latest novel, and The Maleficent 7, which is Cam's latest novel there, both of them are signed. You order them together from The Broken Binding, there is a special deal. So check it out. There's a link down below, and thanks for them for sponsoring it. But we're here tonight to find out more about Cam, who he is, where he came from, his path to publication, and all of that. So let's go back to the beginning. What were you reading?
Okay.
What were you, not the very beginning. What were you reading as a kid? Were you?
Well, I was going to say I was born ready with a pen in my hand.
Okay, yeah. I was born in 19. No. So what were you reading as a kid? Did you start with fantasy or did you come to it later? Because it's always interesting.
Fantasy. Because my brother used to have a drawer full of like Dragonlance Chronicles, Lord of the Rings, Arthur C. Clarke, Fighting Fantasy. That was a big one. And on a similar vein, he had Lone Wolf.
Right.
Do you not remember Lone Wolf?
No. What's Lone Wolf?
I think you would enjoy those.
What as in Lone Wolf and Cub?
No, very different. It's along the same kind of lines as Fighting Fantasy.
All right, I don't remember it. I remember I've forgotten somewhere the Jackson and Livingston green covers Fighting Fantasy ones, but
yeah, you should look those up. They were really good.
All right.
So yeah, I had a drawer full of these, and I was also watching like films like Willow, and then there was a Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, which I'm still a big, massive fan of. So I can't remember a time I wasn't. My favorite toys were Transformers.
Yes. Excellent. Optimus Prime for the win. Yeah.
Yeah. I was more in the Decepticons, apart from Grimlock, who's still the best Transformer.
Which is the one with it was the tape deck?
Yeah. That had Soundwave.
That had all the little tapes that came out. Like one was a panther, one was a little plane, one was something else, like a little robot.
Yeah.
Like a little robot inside a robot, which is a bit creepy.
Yes.
But
Soundwave was one of my favorites, absolutely.
Oh, God, so good.
Yeah, so I was just immersed in fantasy and science fiction, and the D&D original box set, the red box set. Back before I knew how to play it. But I used to love reading all the scenario books.
Yeah.
There was one in particular that was called Isle of Dread.
Right.
Which is basically an island with massive dinosaurs on it, and you've got your own boat. You're trying to navigate and explore this island, and I was just like, oh, that's my thing.
That sounds weird. It's like Island Dr. Moreau, but with bloody dinosaurs or something.
Yeah, and there's a big picture of T-Rex on the front. What's not to like?
Oh, nice. I didn't know that one. Wow, cool. So interesting though, but you were reading science fiction early with Arthur C. Clarke and stuff, because a lot of the times when I talk to people, they kind of go one way or the other. They don't really have both. I mean, I was watching a lot of stuff like you, watching all of the, the Star Treks and things on the TV, but for some reason I didn't read science fiction until much later. Yeah,
I mean, I think a lot of the ones I used to read were they were either like really trashy space opera or really kind of the pulp space opera, the equivalent of the worst sword and sorcery ones. They were published in the 70s, So it was either those I read, or it was, I suppose, Arthur C. Clarke, quite hard science fiction. So there wasn't that kind of the mix I got with fantasy.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I read more fantasy than science fiction when I was growing up. But swords and castles. Gotta love that.
A lot of farm boys going on quests, usually that kind of thing seems to happen a lot,
Yeah, and my mum and dad used to take me around the castles in Scotland, so I would run riot, pretending I was a knight and things like that, and exploring.
Yeah, you got some cracking ones up there.
It's going to stir your imagination.
It's got to. So much history there, built in everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, there was some castles near us, all pretty ruined where I grew up. So
yeah,
nearest one probably like Alnwick and Bamborough and things like that, and they're still worth looking around.
Yeah,
for sure. So, when did you start thinking about I want to do this? I can write. Were you writing stories as a kid?
Well, I wasn't writing stories per se when I was very little. I was more kind of making them up in my head. And then you go through school and your English class, and you have to write a story about such and such. And it's supposed to be like a really boring subject, like write a story about a radio station. And I'm like, okay, so radio station is going to blow up, make it a bit more exciting. I always found the kind of the fantasy space opera is more interesting than I suppose literary fiction, which is what they wanted from me. They didn't get it. But yeah, but I kind of dabbled over the years. No, it wasn't until I don't know I'd kind of graduated uni, and I'm finally going to do it. I've talked about writing a novel for years. I'm finally going to start a novel, and then I started another novel, and then I started another novel because none of them were working. Yes.
So you're caught in that cycle, that edit, revise.
20,000 words in. So, a good chunk. And then I would just run out of steam because I didn't know where it was going. Because I had like a character or I had an idea, but, I didn't have a plot. I didn't have a story around it. I might have had a start of something, but and that's part of the journey, isn't it? You've got to learn how you write a novel as well.
Yeah. I always say, even if the novel doesn't go anywhere, you've got to finish it. You've got to get to the end and finish that first draft. And you learn so much in doing the novel that when you get to the end, you'll be like, oh, you can look back at the beginning because it's the furthest away, and you realize what you're trying to do because you've worked out what the character is and what's happening.
Yeah.
When you get to the end, you go, oh, of course. And you can go back and change things. But a lot of people get to that 20, 30, 50,000 and then just stop. And I'm like, no, keep going. Get to the end.
So, I found a lot of ways not to write a novel. That's
right.
the learning experience. So I did that. Probably maybe 8 false starts, and then novel, and persevered. Took me a good few years to do it. It was like a high fantasy.
Right.
Awful.
So were you writing it and editing it yourself, or were you getting other people to read it as well?
Purely on my own, well, not really knowing what I'm doing, or I hadn't at that point learned how to self-edit, which is another part of the journey. So there was various things I knew were wrong with it, but I just didn't know how to fix it.
Right.
Or I didn't even know what was wrong. I'm just like reading this, but it feels really flat for some reason, but I've no idea. And at that point, I didn't want to go around and rip chapters out and rewrite them either, because I'd written it. I didn't want to go back and write the thing again.
Yeah.
So I wrote that, sent it out to a few places, got I think 2 rejections and silence from the rest. That was in the days when you printed off your first however many chapters and posted it off.
Yes. People won't know this, but before the internet, we were both around for starters. But before the internet, if you wanted to get an agent, you'd send the first number of chapters with a covering letter and the synopsis in an envelope with a stamp, self-addressed envelope with stamps on to the agent. So you'd post it out, and you knew you'd get a rejection when your own handwriting comes back through the letterbox. And you're like, before you've opened it, you already know it's a rejection because you know the weight of it because you posted it. You know how much it cost. You're just there going,
Yep. So yeah, that was a fun stage. So then I shelved that one and wrote another one, an urban fantasy.
Right.
And I was like, oh, my writing's getting a bit better. Finished that. Went, nah, that's not publishable.
So you immediately knew before you didn't even send it to anyone.
No, I didn't send that one to anyone. So that got immediately shelved. And then a few years after that, I decided, right, I'm going to go back and I'm going to learn how to write properly. Because it's all well and good looking things up on the internet, but things like I have this paragraph of description or like an action scene or something, how do I make it good? Sure, you can get lots of generalities, but you don't have someone to say, no, if you tweak this and move this down here and replace this long sentence with like 2 words just to tighten it all up, make it fast and quick and snappy and things like that. Give you concrete examples.
Yeah.
Couldn't get any of that online. So I joined a local writers group.
All right. Okay.
Started doing short stories. I suppose, leveled up. Took a few years to level up, to critique other people's stuff, get my own stuff critiqued. Learned a lot.
Was it doing short stories then? Because had you done short stories before then? That's a bit of a change.
It is. It was a very big change. It's a whole different skill set.
Yeah.
It's like, right, okay, I have a story. Will it fit in 3,000 words? But yeah, and then because I was doing short stories, see like 3,000, 5,000, whatever the market was.
Yeah.
And then inevitably I'd go by a couple of thousand words, and then and then you have to go back, and it's okay, so I'll need to edit, cut out all the fat, cut out some of this, some of the sentences I really quite liked, but don't really add too much, and just really, yeah, it was all part of that self-editing process that just makes it a lot tighter, a lot smoother. Yeah, so I did that for a few years, and then I decided, right, now it's time to do a novel.
So before we get to the novel, did you find getting feedback from other people and also critiquing others? How did you find getting it? But did it help you looking at other people's work as well to kind of point out?
I think it probably helped more than getting my own work critiqued.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, but so I think it was the third time I went to my writer's group, they had a gap where someone hadn't submitted a story. So it was the third time I'd been along, and so I was like, right, I'll put one of my stories in, which was like a space opera. Mm-hmm. And one of the critiquers was an astronomer.
Oh no. Okay.
He was pointing at all of the fallacies of the story. Like, because you get sucked out of your spaceship, you do not immediately freeze. That's Hollywood. It's like, how is that heat going to dissipate? You've not got convection, you've not got conduction, you've got radiation, but that will take a while. And I was like, oh yeah. And he's like, yeah, and stars don't twinkle either because you don't have an atmosphere. Oh yeah. It's like, I need to do more research when I'm writing about stuff.
Yeah. But you're giving feedback to other people as well on their stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It comes to a certain point, because say you've got like 12 people that are critiquing the same things. There comes a certain point where you can almost anticipate what other members of the group are going to be saying.
All right.
It's like, I think Neil will say about this character feels a bit flat and that kind of thing, and this is why, and you could jazz up doing this. And if I'm writing, sometimes I'll be like, oh wait, someone will say this about this character or this scene, I should probably fix that before I submit it. So it's almost like you've got them away working in your head, looking over going But yeah, it was a big learning experience for me, and I think it was exactly what I needed to improve.
The other thing we should say is that, of course, during all of this, you were going to events.
Oh yeah.
In the UK, we've got a number of events like FantasyCon, which is an annual event that's all around science fiction and fantasy. There's EasterCon, which is another one, usually end of March, April time, fantasy focused and some sci-fi. Going to panels and listening to editors and other authors. And you're doing this for years. I know this because I was also there at these events.
Yes, you were. I was very eye-opening going to my first con, which was the World Con in Brighton in 2013.
Right. Okay.
So big con. People like Robin Hobb, Joe Abercrombie, and Terry Pratchett, Neil Gaiman.
Wow.
And I'm just kind of wondering, going, I'm this like newbie wannabe writer type person, and it's all these proper writers.
Yeah.
And I guess now I am one. It's kind of weird. It's like I'm going to these things, but I'm on the panels, not the audience.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you found that transition.
Odd, really odd.
Yes.
I mean, I've just been to, the Fantasy Con about a month ago now or so, and I was on, I wasn't on a panel, but I was there just, in the audience and some things and chatting to people, but it's still that weird kind of thing that I just feel like just another punter, really. But I don't know, it is different. And some people were like reluctant to come up and talk to me, and I'm just like, no, that's totally fine. There's no reason you shouldn't.
Absolutely.
I'd never wanted to be the kind of writer that when we've gone to cons and they've just sat by themselves and the fans can't come and talk to them like they're sort of, a tear up or something. I'm just like, no, that's just pretentious and wankery. I'm not interested in any of that.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was going to say to you, actually, is I do remember the authors that made time for me back when I was, just a fan. We remember those sorts of things.
Oh, yes. And now we're on the other side of the table. One, we don't want to be like that. And two, we still remember who they were.
Yes, we do.
Our memories
are.
But
it's, I very much remember people like Edward Cox, who was just getting published at the time. He made a lot of time for a lot of new authors. Peter Newman, he made time to talk to a lot of people that want to be authors. I very much appreciate people like that, and I very much remember them for it as well.
Yeah. James Barclay's always been brilliant. He's always been very generous with his time, and he's got loads of fantasy novels out, and he's always been very approachable and very kind. And even now, if I email him about something, he'll answer me if he can. When he can, he's not busy doing theatre and other stuff. But he's brilliant. But
yeah, I've had people come up to me saying, "Oh, look, I seen you yesterday, but I didn't want to come up and bother you." And I was like, "What? Come on, man! We're all fantasy fans here. Come and talk about books. Tell me what you're reading."
Exactly. This is it. At the end of the day, we went there originally because we were fans and still are fans.
Absolutely.
And that's my to read pile is covered in books. I'm still reading fantasy. I know some. So there's a question. Some fantasy authors don't read within the genre because they feel it's too much like a busman's holiday. And like when I was at an event with Joe Abercrombie, he was saying when he tries to read fantasy, he's looking at going, oh, I would have changed this, and no, I would have done that with this character. No, you should have done this. So he can't turn that kind of critical part of his brain off. Can you do that? Do you still read fantasy and enjoy it?
I can turn that thing right off. No, I still read as much fantasy, if not more than I used to. However, sometimes I do read things and it's such a good idea, or there's like such a good character. I'm just like, oh, you bastard! I wish I had thought of that.
Yeah. I read some cracking books.
Professional hazard, I suppose. But no, I get very immersed in books. The only problem I have nowadays is, I suppose, less tolerance for books that don't work for me. Because I used to finish every book I read.
Really?
I'd pick it up and I start it. Well, it's not really working for me. Okay, I'll finish it off. I'll persevere. 600 pages later, I'm like, all right, charity shop.
Yep, someone else can enjoy it.
I just don't do that anymore. I don't have time. I've got a full-time job, and then I've got my own writing. I want to read things that I'm enjoying. I'm not going to persevere past a certain amount of books, say 50 pages or something, if I'm bouncing off the prose hard, or if it's just not engaging me. I might come back to it later because I might not be in that particular mood, but we'll just start something else.
Yeah, I'm the same. I used to, I wouldn't finish every book, but now I used to give them like 200 pages. If I'm struggling a little and it's okay, I'll go to 200. But if I'm really having issues, like you, I think 50 is my kind of like limit.
Yeah.
When it gets to the point, I'm like, I'm finding excuses to put it down and not go and read it and do anything else other than read it. I'm like, okay, just put it down and move on to the next one. That's when I know it's not for me.
The amount of books I've been recommended where it's like, oh, it really gets really good in the, after 300 pages. Yeah, I don't want to have to read 300 pages of something I'm not enjoying just to get something that might be good. If it's not grabbing me, it's not grabbing me.
Yeah, and I always say this as well. It doesn't have to be that page one someone gets shot or stabbed. It could be the voice of the characters. It could be the style of writing that hooks me. It could be just it's an interesting plot. So it doesn't have to be page one something dramatic happens. But within those first 50, if nothing has happened that's interesting to me, or I'm not enchanted by the voice, or so I've just read the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden. They're amazing. They read like old-fashioned folklore stories that were written 50 years ago, but they're she's written them in the last 5-6 years. They're amazing. And when the first few pages are like, this is incredible, I love this, and I've burned through the trilogy in less than a couple of months because it was so good. And there again, action later on in the books, but within the first 50 pages there wasn't sort of sword fights and dragons and magic. It's like, no.
Yeah, I mean, you can have one of these things. You can have a really engaging writing can draw you in. So it can make a tea party seem interesting. You can have a really interesting character, and they can do anything else they want as long as they've got an interesting character. There's lots of books I've read where not much happens. The writing's not particularly great, but they've got an amazing character, and that's going to win for me every time. But there's at the moment I'm reading The Black Tongue Thief.
It's on my pile here to read. Christopher Beelman. Is it good? You enjoying it?
It's that whole character voice thing you're talking about that it just grabbed me in the first 5 pages, and I'm like, yeah, this is going to be for me.
I'm gonna have to read it soon. I'm gonna have to get it soon now. Damn you, Chris. There you go. Chris Blackton.
That's the one.
That's to read soon. Then I'll bump it up my pile because you said so.
You won't regret it.
It looks. Finding an excuse. So I'll move it up my to read pile now. Anyway, so let's get back to your story. So you tried a few more fantasy novels, and then what happened next?
Yeah. So I was doing short stories. I did one short story. I was like, I'm going to try a bit of genre mashup, and I was always writing in third person. So it's like, okay, I'll try a kind of sword and sorcery film noir, but I'll do it in first person, just as an experiment, just to kind of stretch my writer muscles. So I did that, and that's the character and the setting that became the Traitor God. So I was like, oh, I really enjoyed that. I want to keep on writing it. So I was like, right, okay, I'm going to write. I'm just going to keep writing. A whole novel bloomed out of that. But around the same sort of time, I was reading some other fantasy novels, and they were not good. And I was like, how did this get published? Wait, this get published? If this got published, surely I can get it published. So it's part of that whole thing of, I just want to write my story. And the other thing is, maybe I can get this published as well. So I should maybe try and write it as well as I can. And then submit it to my writers group and see if they think it's awful.
So what did they say then when you showed them? Was it a short story or just the start of
the
book?
I showed them the novel.
Oh, right. Wow, the whole novel.
Yeah. They critiqued the whole novel. Whole variety of feedback on it. Quite a few structural changes and things like that had to be done. And I was like, yeah, you're spot on. Yeah, that needs changed. Yeah, that character needs done. The story starts like 2 weeks after it should start, because it starts and it's like, oh, there's this thing that happened, which is why he's here. And they're all saying, going, well, why don't you show us the really interesting thing that happened? Oh, yeah, I guess I could do that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think sometimes you get too locked up into what you've already put in the page, and it's hard to try and deviate from that.
Yes.
Until someone goes, usually an editor goes, have you thought about doing this? And you're like, oh, yeah, that would work.
it's a cliche, but it's true. It's like you can't see the wood,
Yes.
the wood for the trees,
Yeah,
because you're so deeply in
absolutely.
it.
This is what's I'm talking about cycling back, where I found it really interesting critiquing other people's work,
Right.
because it's an entirely new work to me. It's so much easier to pick out the flaws in it and think of ways to improve it. Look at your own work, and you're like, looks all right. Look at someone else's, and you can immediately just go through it and pick all these bits and pieces out. So then I started applying that to when I was writing my own thing, and got, to just be aware of this and that, and it all really helped me. So I reworked the novel, sent it out to a few agents, got a few rejections, and one acceptance. So I was like, oh, okay. It's like, I don't know how you reacted when you got that email saying, like, do you want to have like a Skype call to discuss things, or a phone call, maybe in your case?
So where was I? So I got an email that said, one-line email that said, please, can you send me the full manuscript? So I did. And then the next email was saying, I'd like to represent you, but the novel needs some work. It needs this, this, and this. Could you come to London so we could have a chat face to face? So that's the email. That's the email I got, because we could do face to face meetings back then.
Yeah,
less so these days, but we could back then. That's what I got.
So we had a Skype meeting,
right?
Video call. And about an hour before this call was due to discuss things, so I'm like, go on, you wouldn't get offered a phone call if someone wasn't interested in some way. And then worldwide logging in for Skype went down from all apps.
Oh no!
So I'm sitting on the laptop going, oh, I can't get logged in. Wait, I'll try the iPad. Oh, it's not working either. Try the app on the phone. That's not working either. But then I figured out, if you just go onto the Skype website, that was working. So that was about 10 minutes before the meeting, and I'm just like, whew.
And they got on okay as well then. So you had this chat with your agent.
Yep. And turns out she was just as nervous about wanting to represent.
Really?
Yeah. So it happens on the other side as well. When they really want a book, they want the call to go well as well. But of course, I'm on the Skype call talking to the agent, really serious things, and my cat's just wandering back and forth. Here's a bum.
It'll diffuse things a bit when your cat just kind of, the tail goes past.
Cat's ignored me all day. Then you've got a really important call, cat.
Yeah, every time. Happens today on Teams, when everyone Teams now. The cat just wanders in. Yeah.
So that went well, and then we did some more edits, and then it got sent out, and Angry Robot snapped up. And
this is the duology behind you.
Yes, so that was the Traitor God back there. And so they bought one book, and then very quickly decided they wanted another one. So
right.
Like, I'm fine with that. I'd better get writing it then.
So did you have ideas already in the back of your mind for where the story would go after the first one?
What? Because it's fantasy, I had a trilogy plotted out. Because it's fantasy, and fantasy does trilogies. Yeah. And so they looked at my outline and went, how about a duology? And I was like, okay. That works for me if you want to buy another book. So I took the original ending off of my third book, and that is the original ending of the second book. So they thought, perhaps maybe correctly, that the plot would just be stronger as a duology.
Right.
So I'm like, yeah, you could be as a trilogy if you wanted to buy 2 books. Yeah.
It's interesting how the conversation suddenly changes from before of, oh yes, please take the book to, well, is it 2 or is it 3 books? You know, what can we negotiate?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's the same when they're just starting out. It's like, yep, I'll do that. Yep, absolutely. I'll do anything you want. Just take this book. Give me money and publish it, please. Thanks.
Yeah, because you spent so long trying to get an agent, and then you get an agent that spends so long trying to get published. You just kind of, you're happy to be there.
Someone showing interest. You're just like, yes.
So it took quite a few years then, like, you know, like me, it took you a lot of years to get an agent and then to get a book deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so I finished those, and I had about 3 or 4 different ideas. So I've got about 3 or 4 different starts of novels. But then I had, I think, 3. I'd done about 20,000 each on.
Right.
And then I had the idea for the Maleficent 7. And I was like, yeah, I'm writing that now. And everything else got shelved, and I just plowed ahead with that because I just really, really enjoyed both the idea and the characters.
Yeah.
So far, it's the easiest thing I've written.
Interesting.
Even though my geology is from one point of view, so I've gone completely the opposite and had 7 major points of view and multiple minor. Not making it easy. Yeah.
A challenge.
Oh, that is partly why I wanted to do it as well. Because while I was writing the first person geology, there's lots of things I couldn't show the reader that are happening in the city going around them, because there's no other point of view. So I kind of had to work around that. Whereas this one, I've like, yeah, you can see everything because I've got people everywhere.
So did you pitch that idea to your agent, or once you're like 20,000 words in or something?
Well, my agent for the first 2 books took a step back from aging due to real life issues. So I didn't have an agent at the time when I was writing this. So I wrote the first draft of Maleficent 7, and then I was like, right, okay, I'm going to start looking for some good agents. And then I was speaking to RJ Barker, and he's like, oh, that's a really interesting idea. That sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah, you're speaking to Ed. You're speaking to Ed Wilson. He's my agent. Yeah, go and speak to him. I was like, oh, okay.
Nice.
So I sent it off to him, and he was like, yep, I'm having that. So
it helps though, because
that one was easy.
Well, yes, having contacts is good, but also it helps the fact that you're already published and you already have a back catalogue of, you know, a duology done, and your name is, you know, out there. It's a slightly probably easier sell to an agent than
I think
a person with no sales or history at all.
And I suppose it does help that my first 2 books did pretty well. I mean, not Joe Abercrombie well, sadly, but I think most authors know how that feels. But
we both work full time still, so
yeah,
that's all you need to know.
Yeah, but reasonably well, earned out the advance. You know, what more can you ask for? The publishers in profit. People seem to like it. So yeah, it's definitely easier to get another agent once you've had books out there. But I mean, that start is hard. When you're just starting out trying to get your first agent, it's really hard. So I remember that very well, which is why whenever people come up to you and start talking to you at cons about wanting to get their own book published, you're able to give them a bit of advice. Yeah. So I got advice off people in my writer's group, like people like Peter Newman and Ed Cox that I mentioned earlier. So I think it's good to pay it forward. There's so much bad information out there.
Oh God, yeah. It's one of the reasons I started this channel as well, is to put out information that's more accurate and is direct from experience, and things that you and I have learned over the years from going to the cons and listening to editors and agents. If I don't say wow, I say no. It's the famous catchphrase of one very well established agents.
Yes, I know exactly who you mean.
He's right, though. He's right. And he's,
do you know what? One of the things I've learned at cons is what not to do when you watch when you watch prospective authors cornering agents in the toilets, or up against walls so they can't escape, and they're just barraging them with, "Here's my pitch for my book," and they're yeah, you're not going to get anywhere there.
No, and it's focusing on the wrong person at the wrong time. They really don't want to have that conversation there at the urinals. Is not the time to do it, really.
Yeah, and there's also been people that have approached authors, pumped them for information, then immediately moved on to the next author, going, "Oh, can you introduce me to such and such an editor and such?" Who? You spent about 5 minutes talking to me about your book. Not terribly inclined to help you if you're not going to be a nice person. Yeah,
the convention scene is
that aggressive networking.
Yeah, convention scene in the UK is not very big, but equally the industry isn't that big. So news of bad behavior spreads fairly well, I'd say, fairly quickly. But there's many years you and I were sat at a convention looking at people on panels, learning from them and their mistakes.
Yes.
And now we're on the other side of the table. So a bit of a different story.
It's a bit of a strange feeling, but again, when you look back at where you started, you realize the progress you've made. I find that, it makes me want to keep going. It's like, oh, look how far you've come already.
Yeah. So here's a question. What didn't you know about publishing until you were on this side? What sort of things did you pick up on? Because
I thought it was organized. Once you're on the other side, you realize how up in the air a lot of things are. More than I'd realized, but people should really be speaking to publishers and agents about that sort of thing. I think mostly we just get glimpses into that, and you don't want to wade in more than that.
Yeah, the speed of things was a surprise to me. That's one thing I was sort of aware, but not really, how slow traditional publishing is, partly because of the way it works and partly because of everything that's connected to it, whether it's physical bookshops here and overseas in America and so on. But 12 months turnaround is good. That's probably average, and that's a good turnaround for a book from when the day you hand it in to potentially when it comes out. Things like lists I didn't know about. I
didn't realize all of this stuff going on with the the production, the distribution, the getting out to bookshops, and the ordering process and all of the things around that. It was all a bit bewildering to me. And then I was like, wait, you only find out 6 months after your book's out how well it's done? That was a good one.
Accounting and sales information. It's not
twice a year.
Click of the button. It's twice a year you find out how your books are doing.
Yeah, that was interesting to me.
There's a lot to learn.
What else I didn't know is because when I was just starting to go around the cons, self-publishing was just starting to take off. The prejudice some people had against self-published authors. It was really bad. I mean, I suppose there's a lot of really good self-published books around nowadays. I've got quite a few of them on my Kindle now. But I'm hopeful that things are turning around a little bit now. But there was, I suppose some fans as well as authors were a bit snooty about it back in the day. Yeah,
so self-publishing used to mean vanity press, which is, regardless of the book, you paid someone and they print your book and then you just try and flog it. These days, the last 10, maybe even 15 years, probably, I'd say, self-publishing has become a totally different movement, and it's become, the covers are amazing. People have hired their own editors and proofreaders and copy editors and all that sort of stuff, and they know all the business side because they do it themselves. I mean, there's the stuff that we know on the periphery but we don't handle. And being self-published these days is so much more of a business.
Absolutely. Because I was speaking to a couple of self-published authors a couple of weeks back, and they were trying to enlighten me about how Facebook ads and the whole Amazon ecosystem works,
right?
Which is something that we generally don't have to deal with.
Nope.
It's all a bit bewildering to me, but that's a lot of learning they're doing.
Yeah, it's extra stuff that we don't know because someone else handles it within the publisher. They're looking at sales and stats and trends and advertising and marketing and PR budgets and all that kind of thing. We just don't do any of that.
I do find it fascinating, though. Again, it's that glimpse over the fence to the other side of things. Yeah, it's all very interesting. So many different ways of getting things out there now.
Yeah, and you can, like, some people just do ebooks and audiobooks of things and no physical books, or maybe they do like a Kickstarter for a special edition of a physical book to go with a self-published book and all that kind of stuff. And
I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still some, I suppose even more so these days, there's a lot of really poor books out there. But then there's people that are doing like the self-published fantasy blog off, where some of the really good fantasy books are getting some advertising, getting some eyes on them these days.
Yeah.
So I've been picking up quite a lot of those after reading all the reviews of them.
Yeah. I mean, like Justin Lee Anderson, he won last year. And he got a big boost in sales. He was telling me, and that's done really well. He's now got an agent, but equally, other people who were either finalists or winners have got traditional publishing deals. Whether it's Josiah Bancroft, who I don't think he won that year on the SPFBO, but he's now got a book deal with with Orbit. 4-book deal, and the 4th book's just come out. Jonathan French and the Grey Bastards, he won that year, and he's trilogy's just wrapped up.
Rob J. Hayes, I've been enjoying his books. He's got an agent now as well. Alexander Darwin, who's done the combat codes, he's actually with my agent now.
Right, there you go.
Yeah, so I've been really enjoying, as much as I like traditional publishing and walking into bookshops and working with the publishing house editors and that. I've been really enjoying finding out more about the self-publishing process as well. I'm not sure it's for me.
Do you think you'll do it?
I might give it a go at some point, but it's the whole self-marketing. I'm not so keen on doing that side of things. But I'd maybe give it a go at some point. But I'm quite happy doing the traditional route at the moment.
It's more time as well. I think that's the other thing. It's more time to focus on running the business side of it in addition to everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I've got limited time enough at the moment. I don't want to spend it on trying to figure out like some targeted ad things and whatnot.
Yeah, that's difficult. That is difficult. Yeah. So Benedict asked a good question. He said, when you were planning Maleficent 7, where did you get the idea to do a villain's story? But also, how do you decide which villains made their way onto the page? Because there's a lot of creatures on there. So
yeah. Okay. So I've been wanting to do a villain story for, probably 30 years or something. Because I always found the villains more interesting than the heroes. Going back to the whole farm boy hero chosen one trope.
Yeah,
that you mentioned earlier. It's like, I will let this horrible villain live because I'm so good, and then it comes back and they kill all your family. It's totally your fault. I'm like, nah, I want to kill them. Just kill them. Yeah. So I want to do a proper villain story for ages. because I didn't want to do a single point of view, I was like, oh, right, okay, so I can have like like a bad D&D group, and it's like, oh wait, hang on a minute. And it's like, yeah, I think I was talking to you actually and a couple of people like Adrian and Rob and whatnot at one of the cons.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, right, I've got this story about these villains. I don't really know what to call it yet. And we're all thinking, yeah, like it's okay. So evil words. Yeah, Maleficent 7. Yeah, that works. So I was like, right, okay, yep, that is what it was. So I may as well call it that. It perfectly describes it. There was also one of the characters, Black Haran, is based off a real person. There's a 14th century noblewoman,
Right,
called Black Agnes. She was Countess of Dunbar in Scotland in the 14th century. Her husband was off fighting a war with English, and so she was left behind with some servants and a couple of guards. An English army of 20,000 men laid siege to her castle, and she was basically just like, nope, I'm not going to surrender, thank you very much. So they started lobbing massive rocks at her battlements, and she got her maid to go after every bombardment with her handkerchief and dust off the battlements.
Brilliant.
Then they managed to capture her brother and said, if you don't surrender the castle, we're going to hang him.
Right.
And she went and said, okay, well, I'm his heir, so I only stand to benefit if you hang him. On you go.
Wow.
Yeah. They tried to bribe her guards to let them in through the gatehouse, who immediately turned around and told her. And then she just used that to trap a bunch of them. So they let a bunch of them through the portcullis, and then it slammed down. And they managed to capture or kill all those invaders. And I was just like, yeah, the sheer gumption of this woman facing down this army. Is that, but if I made her a villain at the same time, that would just be perfect. So I do take all these little bits from history and work them into novels. Mm-hmm. But because the Maleficent 7, it's I suppose it's like old-fashioned sword and sorcery in a way.
Yeah.
But I just want all these people that would be the villain of another novel and just try and get them all to work together. So you've got a vampire lord, you've got a demonologist, summoning demons to her bidding, an evil necromancer. You've got an ex-war god of like raiding people who slaughters villages and whatnot. You've got a pirate queen. You've got a mad alchemist and all these weird wonderful creations. You've got an orc war chief, leading an army of fighting mad greenskins. And I just wanted to get all these people in the same room together and see what happens.
Yeah. And Justin said, who is your favorite character, and why is it Tiernock?
Yeah, everyone seems to love him. He's like a complete arsehole. He sits there and he stirs the shit, and he makes all these really crude comments, and people love him for it, despite the fact in his past massacred villages. No. This is the thing I want to do, where evil characters are not all evil mustachio twirly villains. They've all got reasons why they do things they do.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is just that they enjoy it. But they can have other things they enjoy. They might like puppies and cats. Not everything has to be one-dimensional evil.
It's true. Yeah. But yeah, so as you said, it's quite a shift from doing a single POV to suddenly having lots and lots of different ones, and having them all evil as well. Did you have to kind of tone down any of it to make sure that it wasn't too kind of over the top and ridiculous and just kind of?
I think it was various aspects of that. One of it was I didn't want to go full on kind of doom and gloom grimdark. especially with current events, because I wrote some of this during lockdown. So yeah, quite enough doom and gloom, thank you. Which is why there's quite a large dose of humor in the book.
Yes.
Just want that monotone darkness, slaughter, grim, blood, you know. Much as I enjoy that sometimes, but I want a mix. One of the things I learned from reading David Gemmell was the way he did villains. Yeah, they were absolutely horrible people, but every so often they had a line they wouldn't cross, or there was that little spark of hope and light inside them that meant they would do a good deed, possibly at the end of their life. And that just really brought out those characters alive for me. So I wanted to write evil, horrible characters, but they might still have some redeeming traits, which was another part of the issue. I didn't want to make them too nice.
Yeah.
So Tiernak in particular got some really good, really funny lines. But I'm like, he's still a mass murdering bastard,
Mm-hmm.
So have to make sure you remember that, just despite the humor. So
he likes the kids and he looks after them and they seem to like him, and it was a bit of a careful balancing act of good and evil and kind of grimness and humor. But mostly I just wanted it to be entertaining. Yeah. So what's next? Are you working on something completely different? Is it going to be a standalone or series? Do you know yet?
Well, I've got no contract in place. I've had a couple of queries. But I'm writing another standalone at the moment, which is it's a Bronze Age sword and sorcery Celtic inspired thing.
Interesting.
It's going really well at the moment. All of the characters have suddenly developed themselves, so I'm ready to go.
Yeah, it takes a while with a new world. I find it's both a blessing and a curse starting a completely new world. What about you?
Oh, it's there's a lot of thinking goes into it just to get it up off the ground, and then you have to go back and go, oh, but I've got this really great idea. I need to go back and retrofit that in. So I've been doing a lot of that, and it's it gets deeper and deeper and more fleshed out as you go along. So I'm about halfway through that book now. So it's fully developed, and now the plot can. I don't have to think about all these things now because they're already on the page.
Yeah. I also it's scary when you do something completely new because you haven't got stuff to fall back on that you set up before, the world, characters, magic, or any kind of thing. But equally, it's quite refreshing because there's no rules. There's new rules that you create, whatever you want to do. You're like, oh, I can't do this. No, I can. No one says I can't because it's not set up anywhere. Oh yes, I can do this, and
Yeah, so I finished the Maleficent 7, and I've got various starts of novels, and then this idea just popped into my head, and I was like, right, I'll shelve these other ones again.
It shows that it's a strong idea that if it's leading the pack like last time, like Maleficent 7.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just going to write the one I'm most enthused about at that particular time, which I am at the moment with this one. After that, I might try a trilogy. Yeah, the traditional fantasy trilogy. Yeah. So I've done a duology. I've done a standalone. Hopefully, someone will pick up this new standalone, and I must do a trilogy next, surely.
Yeah, you've worked up to it at this point. Yeah. You paid your dues. It's time for a trilogy. Come on now. Yeah.
I mean, can you really call yourself a epic fantasy author if you haven't done a trilogy?
Well, some people have not even finished their first fantasy trilogy, so can we call them a fantasy novelists? Don't know. Answers down below.
I'll probably end up in a quadrology just to spite myself.
Oh God, I've never gone longer. I've never gone longer before. That's I've never done that because I plan mine quite a lot. But well, yeah, it sounds good. It sounds really, really good. New stuff coming up, new ideas, absolutely. New things. That's excellent.
ideas is not a problem. It's the time to get them on the page.
Yes, fitting it in around everything else, working job and like having a life as well. You know, that kind of
There's
thing.
always that.
There's always that. You know, who's got time to have a life? But we try to do it, and we can as much as possible. Excellent. So if you weren't paying attention at the start, don't forget that mine and Cam's book are on a special deal at the Broken Binding. There's a link down below.
Who are amazing folk, I have to say.
Really, really good. Signed copies from both of us will be there. So you buy both of them together and they're on a deal. So check out the link below and check out that. And check out all of Cam's other books. I'll put some links down below to his social and websites and everything else. But well, thanks for coming on, Cam. Thanks for talking to us about your writing and everything.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. All right, guys. We'll see you later. Good night.